Challenge number 2. The contestants have finished their submissions for challenge number 2 based on the input that they received from our mentors, included here, clockwise from the top. And again, I don't know if Riverside does the final video the way that I'm looking at it, but I'll do it from my point of view. We have Samantha Brentmore. Welcome and thank you very much for agreeing to be a mentor. We have Vanessa Moyen. We have J.A. Huss and Teddy Hamilton. So thank you guys very much for helping our competitors prepare for their first challenge.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, it was fun.
Mm-hmm.
So before I get going, I want to ask you if you have any general philosophy on narrating. I have my own thoughts after seeing everybody's submissions. I've got my own thoughts on some general narration advice that I would give to new narrators. But I think it'd be really interesting to get your point of view on what kind of advice you would give generally to narrators based on your experience and how you remember just getting started.
I can jump in on it. I have a thought. I always have thoughts. I was talking with Samantha about this today. It's something that I found myself talking a lot about to my my mentees, but also it's something that was a process for me when I was first getting into narration, which was this sense that the narrator voice is this voice that happens, and that it's a very official and kind of dry, removed voice of a librarian or this literary mind that speaks in this moment. And a lot of early narrators really separate this time out to where it becomes really dry during the narration. And my thought when I was first getting started was I feel like the storyteller, the person who is telling the story, which is often the voice of the author, but whatever, but when it's you, it's the narrator, the person who's the third person or the first person narrator, should care about what's happening, should have an opinion about the story that they're telling, so that it's not just this removed voice of God that's just saying, and then they walked in the door. It's and then they walked in the door because that was the next thing that happened, and it was really important that they walked in that door. It's just a little slight mental shift, in my opinion, that has opened the doorway to a lot of other possibilities to heighten the drama of various moments by just deciding that the narrator is also a person, that the voice, the storyteller, the point of view, and maybe that person is the author, maybe who knows what it is, but that they care about what they're saying. That they care,
and that makes it a lot more fun, doesn't it?
I think so. It really opens the world up a lot.
I think.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I think that the reason I love you as the narrator so much, and the reason why I loved you from the beginning, is because you narrate in conversation, you're talking to me personally, and most narrators don't do that, believe it or not. Some of them just read, and some people don't have a problem with that, but I can't listen to it very long.
Yeah.
But you are very conversational. It's like you and I are sitting in a room together and you're talking to me, right?
Yeah.
I think it's important to keep that front of mind and not go and still leave room, I think, for a listener to make their own decisions about these characters. Because sometimes I think people take that advice too far, and then we're just telling you exactly how you need to feel in these moments. And I think the way you avoid that is just by staying really present with the text. And you can tell when somebody has kind of checked out, because sometimes they'll either overdo the emotion or they'll way underdo it. And I think as long as you allow yourself to be really present and really connect to what the author has given you, and really kind of envision that person that you're talking to and sharing this story with, I think that's where the little zhuzhi magic is, and it feels good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've told somebody they, they might not see you on camera making those faces or slumping your shoulders in defeat or, raising up or raising, lifting your eyebrows, but I think it comes out in the performance. People can hear how you really feel about about the story. And I have a theory about that. I think so. A part of this is technical, and that's it's not a natural thing to take words off of a page, absorb them in your brain, and then spit them back out as if those were your thoughts. And so I think that it takes practice to learn how to be natural, and I think that's a big challenge for for newer narrators to just kind of like incorporate those words as if they're your thoughts instead of some thoughts that somebody else wrote that you're trying to to process.
It always feels so dumb to tell people, like, if you want to get into this, just go read a book in a closet for hours. But that's the muscle you're talking about, right? Like me being able to see words on a page and immediately connect to them and,
Right.
infuse them with that meaning and connection. You just got to put in the time and get used to that.
Yeah, and not think so much about your voice.
Yeah.
I think that I think a lot of people have like a preconceived notion, like I need to be a narrator, so I need to narrate,
Yeah,
and
there's
I
a
need
specific
to
sound.
Your
Yeah.
radio voice. No radio voices,
Yeah.
right?
yeah, like
Yeah.
if you feel like you need to sound sexy in this piece, then you're probably not going to sound sexy in that piece.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of it's just a lot of practice. It's like you said, Samantha. You just
Yeah.
you just have to
Well, it's when it comes to acting, and I would think writing too. Jay, you can speak towards this more than I can, obviously. But like, if you're gonna write characters, if you're gonna portray characters, then as a person, you should be interested in people. To like learn who people are, so that it doesn't matter what their voice sounds like, because you understand this like you understand an inner part about them, things that drive people, the things that craft points of view for whatever reason, and then when it comes to portraying a character, you're not thinking, oh, they probably live somewhere in a middle sea range or something. You're thinking in terms of they got a chip on their shoulder because of what happened before or whatever.
Yes.
You're thinking in those terms, and then you can have the exact same vocal range of the character and have them be drastically different from each other.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Vanessa, I noticed that you do a really good job of that. Like when you do a character, it seems like you just like become that character. I think we had mentioned it in another one of these sessions where like you became the mean girl who was like she was just like she was so bitchy, but you made it sound like
I'm really good at being a bitch. Try it.
I know. I realized that I was stepping into that mud puddle as I was doing it, but
She was so real. It's crazy. I don't know.
it's almost as if it was effortless. No, I mean, I do admire that. I think that people who are able to like really absorb their character and become the person that
Yeah.
that they see on that page is really I mean, that's a
I think
talent.
that's what everyone's kind of talking about too, is like imagining and envisioning the person that you're voicing, right? Like, somebody from your chat. I was reading something today that somebody from my childhood popped up, and I was like, oh my God, this girl never moved her mouth. It was so weird. And I like stared at her for so long. But then I finally, like, this character came out, and I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to say her name, but I was like, I just found this girl. She's in this
Wow.
and somebody else met her too, and
That's funny.
it's kind of cool, right? When like you're reading a book, and you're like, oh my God, I know this girl.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Like maybe that's what makes narrators narrators. It's like we love to just like mimic people that have been in our lives
Totally.
and make them part of our character repertoire.
And I think
So-
relaxing that, narration is huge, right?
Yeah, I think so too.
Like,
I think I think that it's and that's the fun part of it.
Yeah.
Like you said, Ja. Like I remember early on when I was first starting, I used to like participate in all of these ACX narrators and all these Facebook narrator groups, and there were a lot of people who just they felt the need to pontificate about about what makes a professional narrator and what doesn't. And I remember one person said, "Yeah, you don't act the book out. You just say it." And I thought, well, what's the fun in that? Like, why would you want to? I mean, you might as well just like narrate medical journals then,
It's
if that's what you're gonna do.
it's a fair there. I do think, just to put it out there, there is something fair to the idea of there's different style choices that can be made in one. I've always said the way I divide it up is you're either reading somebody a book or you're acting out a story, and I think the best is when those two worlds merge. But some people act a lot and kind of chew the scenery on a book, but then other people just read the book and let the listener decide for themselves what these things are. Like, if you're reading a book, you decide in your head what everybody sounds like. You decide in your head what these moments are and what they mean. And we're just vessels for you doing that without a book in your hand.
Right.
There's an argument to be made for that as a style of narration. I'm okay with that. It's not the way I like to do it, but I think there's an argument.
Yeah.
I just don't want to poo-poo too much the idea that
Well,
you are
I mean,
reading something.
yeah. Sometimes I mean, I guess I guess I should. Do you remember that movie Bad Teachers? Bad Teacher with Cameron
Cameron Diaz?
Diaz. Remember the guy that like? I feel like the guy, the Justin Timberlake character when they were in the museum and they made these points and the guy goes, "Yeah," he kept agreeing with everybody. He didn't have his own opinion, but as you were saying that, I found myself going, yeah, I guess I could remember, like there are books that I read where if I'm like the third person omniscient, I'm not trying to like impart any, unless I'm like reading it, describing the person's POV in the way that he or she is feeling. But oftentimes, if it's just a story laying out the scene, then I won't. It's not like I'll act it out. It's just or act as if I have an opinion on what's going on. I just kind of like relay it as best I can.
Especially in first person, especially in romance.
Yeah.
If these are romance books we're talking about, they don't want a dead reader. They don't want just a robot. Have Siri read it for you if you want. But
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, and although at the same time, I think to myself, like I don't do very much biography or nonfiction, but I think sometimes, like if I did, I think it would be as important to like convey the book as if it is a story. Otherwise, like if you're presenting dry material as a dry narrator, then that could make everybody fall asleep.
To it. I listen to audiobooks too, and
Yeah, you check out.
I stop listening. I check out.
Yeah, exactly.
I always say that
what do you
nonfiction should be
think
done
about-
as like
maybe
a
never mind
knowledgeable
what I'm
neighbor.
Well, no, I think we both. That's funny. We both just kind of like went full circle, but
We talked ourselves out of our own argument.
Exactly, yeah. But no, I understand what you're what you're saying. So that
I
makes
think
sense.
taste. Me and Samantha were talking about this earlier, which is like taste matters. You can kind of pull a lot of different things off just by that's where the art of it lives. It's like
Yeah.
It's art.
So-
It's
Yeah.
personal preference. It's all subjective, right? That's the
yeah,
point.
Yeah.
yeah.
And it seems like everyone in this room likes really conversational, intimate narration versus like,
Yeah, really.
right? It seems like
Yeah.
we all have a very specific style, and yeah,
Mm-hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, like, it's like you said. So JA, one of the things that I'm one of those people who doesn't really know art, but I know what I like. And when I read Ernest Hemingway, it seems like I cannot figure out why I love reading Ernest Hemingway, because as I read through it, I feel like this is so dry. Like he seems to write so dry, but his stories are, I can't tell you. I mean, I've read I've read two of his books straight through. Well, Old Man of the Sea is fairly short, but it's just for whatever reason the way that he writes, as you know, I can't really describe like it. You know, he doesn't make, you know, he doesn't tell bombastic stories, but the way that he tells a story is just amazing, as understated as it is. So
That's called author voice, which
Yeah.
is a lot
yeah.
like real voice, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody has a style, and it comes through in the writing,
Hmm.
and just like it comes through in the narration. And
Yeah.
it's not really something, I mean, I guess it's something you can learn as an author, but and a narrator as well. But mostly it's just natural. Like how natural can you be and get the job done, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe that's how it comes out. You know, it's like when you hear a great narrator, you might not necessarily hear this over the top emotion, or you know, you might not hear a lot of emotion in their voice, but it still is riveting. It's compelling. So maybe that's what you know, experience brings. So I think that's good for a start. So Vanessa, what do you think of Lainey, aka S.E. Zell?
Yeah, I thought that she did a great job relaxing her narration style. And then she did a good job of adjusting her character so that she wasn't grabbing too much for the male voices.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah, I think she did great.
yeah. I think that was pretty good too. Let's play Sean Chaucy, and I think Sean was yours, Samantha. All right. What do you think, Samantha? I think that, like, for one, Sean's got a wonderful voice.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just his natural tone that he's bringing is really wonderful to listen to. I'm really proud of the adjustment that he made to take the time to connect to the text. Like, I felt like there was a real confidence in where the story was going, and that I was going to see where it was going to go next. And I feel like he did a good job of like not pushing the female character, even though it's like a short little expletive, that he didn't push it to like Valley Girl stop, and that it still
Right.
stayed in like in a real range. I would still like to see like a little bit more specificity between the two men that start off the scene. Like I feel like there's room for just a little bit more specificity there, but otherwise I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too, and I think he did a you know, a fairly good job of that. He, you know, in as much as he was able to draw a distinction between the characters, he had different pacing for the two guys, and a little bit different style. Like, you know, Caleb was you know, a little more excitable, or I'm sorry, yeah, it was Caleb, and then Orion was a little more reserved and down, you know, down a little bit lower in the register. So that was nice. So
Yeah.
maybe just a little more practice on that, right? Okay, so Zach R belongs to, where
Teddy.
is to Teddy? All right,
Edgar belongs to Teddy.
yeah. Zach R
He's your
belongs to
Mentos.
Teddy. Yeah.
Mentos.
All right, here we go.
Yeah, I think my thing with Zach during the Mentos process was to try and sort of bring a little bit more out into the narration, because his dialogue portions weren't really a problem, but I was getting a little bit of the dry thing that we've been talking about tonight from him during the first thing that I heard from him. But yeah, he definitely improved a lot more. He definitely likes words. You can tell that he enjoys like the feeling of the words in his mouth when he's playing with them because he will find fun words and kind of chew on them a little bit. And I think it's nice. I think he's a very charming reader. I think I would enjoy listening to him read the book.
Yeah.
What I liked to see was a little bit more investment in the narration portions so that it was less distanced. Still kind of there a little bit, um I enjoy him a lot as a listening experience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. I think he has a nice voice and a good presence, and you could tell that he probably he has it in him to bring a lot of range to
When
his reading.
like what we were talking about as far as the dry reading somebody a book versus the like super hardcore acty, everything matters. Like, and finding the balance there. I would say he tips a little bit more on the reading a book to somebody portion of it rather than the sort of natural, like, hey, sit down, let me tell you a story. But again, I think he's charming. I think there's a
Yeah,
charm to his reading that is nice to listen to. So he's definitely a good find, I think.
yeah, yeah. I think so too. J.A., you have Natasha.
I enjoyed Natasha when we had our first session, and I still enjoy her now. And even though she did not overdo the male parts and like do the full on male deep growly voice or whatever, you could still tell that there were characters there. And her natural voice is what I told her I love the most. And she has that conversational tone that really good narrators have. And I really enjoyed that. Also, I like how she enunciated her words and paused sometimes.
Yeah,
Because not everybody does that. Sometimes they just read a sentence and they miss the point gets missed, like the nuance of what is being said is
yeah.
sometimes in the pauses instead of just the reading. So I really liked that about her. And I liked her female voices were not her natural voice, which I loved as well. They were a tiny bit higher. So I really enjoyed Natasha's narration.
Yeah, yeah, I thought it was really good too, the I forgot what I was gonna say. Oh, I know the a lot of people that I talk to when I'm giving them advice on their narration is to make it more dynamic and fun to listen to or interesting and compelling. You need to speak the way that that people actually naturally speak, and that is with pauses, and some parts are rushed and other parts are slow, and I think that adds so much to being able to listen to a story. So we've got Cammy up next, I believe, and that's Teddy's, right?
It's me. I really liked Cammy, actually. Um, the thing that I ran into trouble with Cammy, and I think we talked about it during the thing, but I also then heard it because I listened to this prior, is she's got two men talking to each other, and these are two kind of rival men, and because they're mad at each other, they really sounded almost identical, and that was an issue for me with her because it's both, and it's the same. It's kind of what we've been talking about as far as like, if you're making it about the voice, then you end up and you're not paying attention to the inner life of those characters, and you're too focused on like, well, I'm a woman, but now I'm having to read these two men. What are men like? Men are low and they sound like this. That then you end up making all of them sound the same, and that kind of was a little bit of the vibe with Cammy before, and I didn't see a huge change with that in this last round. However, I will say I think her narration is phenomenal. I think her the like the non when it's just the different girls talking to each other, and when it's uh the narrator talking, I think she did a really good job of like really bringing that to life and having a lot of different tones and different levels within the narration portion of it. And her character, her dialogue is great too. So it really just comes down to maybe focusing too much on the technical voice of two different men talking rather than what separates them from each other.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and I think that the text gives you the hints that you need
Yeah.
to make those choices. And I think it's there is a technical aspect to it because you have to figure out, all right, that guys do have deeper voices than girls,
Yeah.
but
Well, and this clip
maybe
doesn't have a lot of. There's not a long conversation between these two guys. It's just
true.
a fight.
Yeah.
Keep your fangs out of my girl. Deal. It's like sort of. There's only so much to.
Classic scene study, right? Where they can't both be at the same energy. If we're going back
Yes.
to like acting school 101, otherwise they're both just either gonna fight or they're like someone's gonna leave the room. Like they're both in the room, the stakes are high,
Yeah.
that's fine, but that doesn't mean they both have to growl, right?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
somebody
Yeah.
has a different energy, and like it's there in the writing. So like make the choice
Yeah.
that one person has the dominant energy, and then somebody else has a quiet, seething energy, right? Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
like how you break it down from an actor. That's going back to the question, right? Like, what do you wish you knew when you were starting out? Like, oh, basic scene study stuff like actually applies in narration too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything
Yeah.
you learned in acting school is like here. It's in the text. Yeah.
And maybe that's a good reason to when people suggest taking acting classes. One of the good reasons to do that is that you do learn those kinds of things, like when you have when you're scene setting the two characters interacting with each other, their energies cannot match for the whole thing. They have to bring a different energy to the conversation. So.
Yeah. I agree.
All right, so Vin is J.A.
Me.
This is yours. Here we go.
I think during our session, she was a little bit nervous. Wasn't she?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and a little bit out of breath. And so I think this was phenomenal. Like, this was loads better than that first sample that I heard. She sounds very calm, and she really took her time. And again, even though her male voice weren't really, really low or anything like that, she did a really good job distinguishing the characters and everything. So yeah, I think she improved a lot.
It was really interesting. I mean, she really was very subtle in her differences between her and the male character, and did a great job. I mean, it doesn't have to be night and day. It's just a subtle difference that makes
I mean,
that makes
some
makes that change.
narrators,
When I
It's
when I was
mannerism.
listening to that just now, I went ooh when she started talking as a male, and it's exactly what you're saying, Jay, which is she doesn't suddenly go super low, but she does suddenly evoke a masculine presence into the space that I went ooh, there he is. I know this guy.
I
I
think-
feel this man talking.
I think we put too much, like, pitch is a crutch, and like we do these like vocal tricks because we think that's gonna get us there, but I don't think that we give enough credit to subtle and specific. And
Right.
if you have a vocal range that allows you to then also like do something else with your pitch or something, that I think should always follow. But I think if you start with subtle and specific, then the other thing, that's what's going to connect to people as they listen.
Samantha, let us give you one of your mentees. How about E.M. Wild?
Oh, I love EM's. I just really love EM's voice. Like, I just love naturally what EM's voice does. So I'm ready.
I'm about to hire him.
I'm glad. For a second, it sounded like you were about to say, "Oh no,
No.
not him."
I really enjoy EM's voice.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think EM has a hurdle that, well, like I would call like the hot girl problem, which is that he naturally has what I think is a really like unique and great tone, and probably has been told. I think he even maybe said in our session like, "Oh, I used to like read these stories to people, and people said I had a great voice." I don't think there's any denying that what he naturally has is great. And then I think the problem, then the hot girl problem, is like, okay, well, what are you going to do with it? And where do we go with that? And I still think he's got room to explore how far he can flex that voice and not fall into patterns that, like a lot of narrators, it's easy to fall into like the same kind of pattern of speech. And I think sometimes he falls into that. And then you can tell moments that he really connects to the text and will hit a joke or get that banter. And so I just really encourage him to stay present and not lean on the trick that, like, naturally he's got an incredible, really interesting sounding voice. And I can't wait to see how far he can continue to develop that. And this, he went, I think, first in our session, and that does sound even better than what he was doing in there. So I really love to see the improvement.
Yeah, I don't think there's any. There's no question in all of these submissions. They all sound better, and in some cases, by a factor of 4 better than what they did originally. So, you guys did some magic. So, okay, so let's go back to JA with Jesse Elwin.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked it a lot. And I like her natural voice is very kind of seductive, right? Like it's a little bit seductive. I liked it. And again, yeah, not overdoing the voices or anything. There wasn't a lot of dialogue in this one, so we didn't get a good chance to hear all that. But a really good. All these narrators are really good.
Yeah, they all have. I think that they each have something that's unique to their voice that makes them very pleasant to listen to, and I think that from this point they all have some good acting ability, and even if you don't hear everything that you want, you know that it's in there, and it's ready to come out. So let's go to Samantha and Jack Hill's take on number 2.
So one of the things that stood out about Jack in our Mento session was there's a section of this text where the main narrator has to do an internal dialogue moment, a speaking to the class moment, then a setting the scene narration moment. And there was a lot happening that I felt like in that session, Jack really elegantly kind of and subtly by degrees shifted his voice so that I could follow each one of those beats. I will say that I think accents are tricky, and if you're going to go for it for the whole thing, it's really accents are a whole different thing. And I think leaning on accents to give difference to your characters is like an easy thing that we can do, but I think we can't. We got to be really careful because it's hard for the listeners sometimes, and we have to sometimes. I do this all the time. I sometimes go way too hard on an accent because I'm like, that's what people want. They want that like thick thing that I'm doing right now. It's like nobody can understand what you're saying. Like you can't get through it, and so I would just caution, like as much as he's showing off his range, that like some of that subtle work that I noticed in our session together can get lost underneath those accents and the tricks of the accents.
Yeah, and the author is the one who's going to ask for the the accent. So it would be good to see if he's got more to offer.
He's got a lovely speaking voice.
I just want to say that I felt
the accent master Teddy Hamilton, ladies and gentlemen.
He was able to bring a very nice emotion to his narration, but then when certain flaws in his dialecticals came in, I was distracted then, and I probably would have enjoyed his performance much better without it.
kind of how like this feedback is really lovely, but in this accent, I'm losing a lot of it because this weird Michael Caine you're giving us, like. But no, I agree with you that I think like and this
She
kind of
turned me into a newt.
I think this goes back to what we were saying before about like male female voices, and voicing the opposite gender. That like we can lose a lot of that really great acting work that you're doing to vocal tricks, and it can actually be more distracted than we think it is. Because yeah, I would agree with you, Teddy. His instincts are great, and like I think if you go back and watch the other session, I was like, whoa, like what you were doing there was incredible.
Yeah, his take on that other Suzanne Valenti, Caroline Peckham piece was, I think, the Gallows Bridge. It was a scene that he really brought a lot of great emotion into that scene. So I think that it's going to be really.
You know.
Well, you just can't. We
I'm
can't
muting.
undercut ourselves, with these things. I've definitely, I've done this to myself so many times, whether or not it's an accent or I feel like, oh well, he's the motorcycle king, so he's got to obviously be 10 octaves lower. Like, and it's just I lose all of that work because I get fixated on that trick, and it's unnecessary.
That's a really good point. Like when you start thinking, oh, I got this voice, that's my biker guy. That's when you realize, oh shit, you're really in danger of losing the essence of your character if you just kind of lean on that crutch to just give what you think is like
The
that,
other crazy
call.
thing about dialects and accents, I don't know if this happens to anyone else, but like generally speaking, we all learn it in a specific voice, right? Like, so like you learn a shortcut of a Cockney accent or a Russian accent, and then they flip it and the 4-year-old has a Russian accent, and you're like, wait a second, I only learned it on a 40-year-old man. So like now, so like
a 40-year-old chain smoker.
Yeah, exactly.
It's true. It's true. It's very difficult. All my Scots are, yeah.
So I think that's the other.
I was playing on the playground in school today, falling down and skinned my knees and cried. I don't
Exactly.
don't want to go to school tomorrow, Mama.
I think a lot of us, me included, don't always realize that you learn a specific accent in somebody's character's voice, right?
Dick Van Dyke.
Yeah.
Hello, Governor. Barbie Jean. You ready, Vanessa?
Of water. Those who gain more than one element are usually gifted this way because they're linked to more than one constellation.
Orion tapped the board and a chart appeared which showed every constellation in the sky.
I think she did a great job with her adjustment. We talked a lot about rhythm and distinguishing her characters, not giving every character the same rhythm and pace. And I think she did a great job taking that note and running with it. I could, even if, we were just looking at sound waves, I think we would be able to tell who was talking slowly and succinctly versus who had kind of a mix. I think I liked the way that she originally gave her narration voice, like the first person voice. I liked that maybe better last week. This one felt like a little more pushed. Like more put on, and I think she has an amazing voice, and I wanted it to just be like a little freer. Like her voice specifically, like free. It seemed like it would be taxing on an 8-hour audiobook. But I thought she did a great job distinguishing the dialogue from the narration, and I liked the way she broke things up, and she made each moment happen for me in my head. Well, she did great.
Yeah, nice range between her between voices. Like the male and female voice was really really pretty cool.
Yeah.
So
can I just say I listened to her thing before we did this, and she was the one more than most that I think the two men were very different people in her narration. I really liked that about her.
Yeah,
that was cool.
Yeah, it's nice. They're going to be nice to listen to all the way through when whenever we get a chance. I think that it's going to be interesting to get the people's comments who are voting.
Yeah.
So, All right, Teddy. How about we give you Lyra Blake and see what you think?
Enough!
Orion bellowed before Caleb could land the strike. The Terra air paused, and it felt like everyone in the class had turned to stone. Tension rippled through the air as Caleb extinguished the flames in his palms, a low growl emitting from his throat.
All right. What are your thoughts?
So one of the things that we worked on with Lyra, and also kind of tortured poor Lyra in our session with her, because me and Troy were trying to explain like tonal shifts, basically from moment to moment, to make this moment feel different from this moment to feel different from this moment, and each moment that when it changes. And neither one of us described it very good. And so then she was just like, what are you talking about? But I think that she did do a better job of finding when, I mean, not in this clip, I listened to her whole thing. This clip was one little section of it, but of finding when the atmosphere in the room changes a little bit. And that was really nice. I will say though that there was a pushing happening in this round of reading, that where everything seemed almost almost the same level of importance, which was max importance. The two men, like what Vanessa was saying earlier, of like finding the different levels that people approach the same problem. There was a little bit of just kind of shouting, and also the narrator was like, everybody's shouting right now. So there was, I think that was where wanting to heighten the drama of the moment might have led her to a place where then everything was a little bit over the top there. But but listening to the whole thing, I think that she did a good job of then finding the different levels that we don't really get in that one little section. But
It's a good critique, though. I think that's like really valuable. Like if you're any narrator anywhere listening to that, if everything is important, nothing is important. And so you need to find
that's so important
ways.
for like everything. That's like if you're raising a kid. If everything's against the rules, then nothing's against the rules.
She has a great girlfriend voice, though, and I kind of wanted. I just wanted to like sit down with martinis with her and like be like, okay, that's like your press story. Can you give me the real deal? Like, what really happened? Instead of like, the presentational. I wanted to like, but I think that comes with what you guys are saying of like, instead of making everything important, let's break it down and have certain pop outs, right?
Well, one of the things I was thinking about, like, there's a certain element of also you just kind of grow as you go in this business, and like if your instincts are good, which we're finding a lot of people whose instincts are good, and they just need a little bit of, they just need time. They just need time to like kind of like finesse a lot of these things.
I think there's a dialing it in that you don't find without hours behind a mic. Yeah, you just they're
both doing the same thing.
We just I know. I think I
feel like listening, right? Like you're listening to your own voice and it's distracting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I think that's. So so I guess what you're saying, Vanessa, is that if you're listening to your own voice and getting distracted by how you're sounding and
versus
the way that you're coming across,
and sit in to the scene, right, and to the narration. I think my first year of narrating, I like didn't have my headphones on at all, which is like not great, but also like I was so like I had to like turn off the perfectionist like thing somehow and just like be present, because otherwise
that's when
right.
Yeah, one of the things when I used to work at Dion Audio, and Bob Dion, who did this like since reel to reels were a thing, like whenever anybody would get like in their head, or they'd get lost, or they'd get disconnected from what they were performing, his thing was like he always knew that it was like you're thinking about your voice, you're thinking about that weird sound that your nose makes sometimes. It's
Yeah.
like, and the more you get out, and the way to get out of it is to see the images, like get into the story, get into this moment. What's happening right now is there's a daughter and she's talking to her father, and
Yeah.
like it's very scary because her father's mean or something. That's what you should be concentrating on. Everything else is just noise in the background that you don't need to be worried
Because
about.
it's not about
Guys,
the story's not about you. You're just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
get out of your like narcissistic way. You know? Not the
But
character.
we're actors.
But we're actors.
I know. Yeah. I can't tell you how long it took me so long to learn that lesson. It's embarrassing, but I mean, 25 years in radio, I think maybe made it more difficult, but it was so difficult for me to learn that lesson. Like, it's not about how your voice sounds. It's not about how, all of those things that you think that people want to hear. That's not it. What's it is the story that you're telling right now. And maybe that is a really good piece of advice for a lot of new narrators, is just take off your headphones. Don't worry about mic technique. Don't worry about how resonant you sound, or whatever it is that you worry about. Don't worry about that. Just read this story. And
It's not about
Worry
Troy
about
Duran.
it.
It's about J.A. Huss.
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. But like, to everybody's credit, that's very difficult too, because what have we just spent a lot of time this evening talking about? Their tone is so amazing. Oh wow, they really went someplace crazy with their voice. I love how they pitch it. Like, we're still having a conversation about all these things we're saying. Forget about it.
Yeah.
It's not about that. So I think like we have to recognize that like that's noise that we have to, as actors, as a part of professionals in this job, like take in and like let go and pass through and recognize that it can't be the most important thing.
Yeah.
But what you are saying is cool, and you sound great saying it.
Right.
Is what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Well,
Yeah.
it's two different parts of your brain, right? You're like, you have a director and an actor. And so like moving your hands takes the director out, and then you're just acting present, and then you can put them back on later and listen back, and you're like, ooh, that scene didn't sound exactly how I thought, or the characters don't sound different enough, or I didn't leave enough space. Then like go back and do it, you know?
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a
Don't
great
forget
way.
the critic too. You also got the critic.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, that one can
Yeah,
be
that's
bigger.
Jerk. Yeah.
Yeah. There's plenty of that. Well, how about we go to Ethan Gray for J.A. Huss, and you can give us your take on Ethan here. What do you think? What do you think about Ethan? How's he doing?
Yeah, I like Ethan. I like this section as well. In the first meeting, we did a different section. It was the fight section, I think. I didn't care so much for his choices when he did the two men, but
Their conflict.
yeah, I didn't. I think you have to be careful, and this is not about what I just heard, but what I heard before. You have to be careful assigning characteristics to characters that aren't there, or just because you need to find another voice for them, because I think it can go wrong more than it can go right. If you go off the beaten path a little bit too much, but. This sample was very good. I liked all the different dialogue changes that he did. I think the second one that says the Little Dipper, I think is like he comes across as a young man, right? Like a teenager probably. And then the girls weren't overdone, and then the jerk in the class sounded like a jerk. So I think he's picking up on all the good things and how to make them different in that. So and of course he has a really nice natural voice as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Another good example of it, there's a guy who's not, it's not like he was, really, really, active, or acting, in a real bombastic way, but made it still sound compelling. So,
there's this thing that I always like to say about Jacob Morgan,
Mm-hmm.
where Jacob Morgan, one of the top narrators here, one of the top sexy voices, is he's got this kind of throwaway vibe that he does with a lot of his narration, where it's almost like he's put upon constantly when he's
Yeah.
narrating. He's like,
Yeah.
and then this happened, and then this happened, and then I did,
Mm-hmm.
and then what that allows is space for him
Mm-hmm.
to then be happy when he's happy, or be in love when he's in love. But his his default state is always one of like kind of a slash between like exhaustion and disdain,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's nice,
Yeah.
and I got a little bit of that with this guy too.
Mm-hmm.
This is who Ethan Grain.
Ethan
He
Gray.
he
Yeah.
he had a he had sort of the one thing that I would say, just as like a, because his voice is super sexy. He's got a very sexy voice. He's got it. He's got that thing,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a difference between exhausted and sounding like you're maybe gonna start falling asleep soon.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah.
he's right on that edge a little bit, to where he might want to just be aware
Yeah.
of that, because I was worried I was like, ooh, he sounds sexy, and is he about to fall asleep a little bit? Maybe he's kind of going a little bit in
It's
that
the hot
direction.
girl problem. If you're if
Yeah.
you naturally have this voice that's just bringing the sexy and it seems easy, I think you have to pay a little bit closer attention to what you're doing with that, so that you don't fall
Yeah.
into these traps where you're like,
I think that's where the pauses and the consideration,
Yeah.
I can hear Teddy thinking when he's narrating. I just
Yeah.
can. Like, I just can. And
Yeah.
it's a hard thing to do when you can't see this person, or you're
Mm-hmm.
2,000 miles away from them. And I think that, but it adds something to it when you can hear them thinking, where
Yeah.
they're considering the words that the other character is saying to them, or they're about to say back, because that's how natural conversations happen, right? Like,
Yeah.
rarely do you have these one-off back and forths that
Mm-hmm.
just snap out. Like, oftentimes you have to pause and think, and then give a reply, and everything.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's a great analogy that you gave, Teddy, with the what makes Jacob Morgan so cool. I mean, it is kind of like he's just kind of like waiting for something interesting to happen, and when it does, like he's bored until it does, and then when you earn his attention, it's really nice. And so maybe it's like that Dolly Parton quote, like learn who you are and then do it on purpose. And so maybe that's the key, is like once he figures that out, what it is about his style that sounds compelling, that he can do that on purpose and kind of, incrementally improve that game. So, okay, Vanessa, are you ready for Kristen Nugent?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right.
I think she did a great job, especially in the earlier part of this cut, adhering to the text's tag descriptions. Like, she hissed, he growled, she yelled. She did a really good job incorporating that into her narration. So that was like a great bonus. I think that she could have loosened up. I liked the male voice. I think she could have loosened up his cadence a little bit. I don't know if I've ever met anyone who talked like that, which doesn't mean that they're not out there. But like, especially a professor, like I don't know if I've ever met somebody. I was having trouble visualizing that professor. Do you know what
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
It was a little like, this.
I find that happens with a lot of women doing male voices, that sometimes they end up like stiffer, I guess, maybe, than
But,
I think men are.
is hard. This is really hard to do. There's always, especially in fantasy, right, guys? There's always like a couple scenes where you have to give the rules of the game that we're in. And that is
Yeah.
super hard, right? To give like not make it sound monotonous.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's it. Guys naturally have more regulation to their voice, so it's not we don't go as high as
Yeah.
women do in our speech patterns, but that doesn't mean necessarily that we are monotone or plodding in the way that we speak. I think
Yeah.
it's and that's that is one of those it's it's a bit of a balance, finding a relaxed tone without sounding without
Like music.
making that natural.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think also one of the things that you were saying, Vanessa, that I it's a hard thing. It's a hard thing for writers, I think, too. Maybe Jay will agree with this, but the this and this and this that you were talking about, where it's like the point is that they all need to be kind of connected,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mhm.
like it this because this then this
Mhm.
then this, like because each thing
Yeah.
leads to the next thing, leads to the
Yeah.
next thing,
Love it.
and even if the thoughts don't seem immediately connected, the reason why I'm having this thought is because of this thought that came before it.
Yeah.
And
Well, I'll tell you how I write a scene like that is that when you have to spell out the rules is so for this scene, he's a professor in front of the class, and he's not just standing there, right? He's pacing or something. He's glaring at this one, or he's like thinking about that one, and none of this is coming through in anything he's saying. But at the same time, if you can visualize your character doing these things, pacing the front of the room, glaring around at the students as he's saying these things, then everything is totally different.
Yeah.
And I think it would come out in the voices because it definitely comes out in the writing when I do that.
I
Yeah.
think this is the other thing that you learn on the narration journey, right? Is that like, yes, this is super important information and the listener slash reader definitely needs to know it. But also, if you don't remember it, it's cool, man. I got your back. As a narrator, like I'm gonna shepherd you. Don't worry, like the story's gonna go on, even if you don't, there's not a pop quiz for you. I got you, you know? And I think that like you don't have to emphasize everything. Like, I'm gonna finish reading this story. Like I'll remind you, you know. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I took this improv class that was kind of cool, where we learned our scene, and then me and my partner would rehearse this scene doing different things. Like we took books we went to the library and took books out and shuffled them all around. And while we were, while we were doing our scene together, we were trying to alphabetize the books, and it helped us to kind of like get out of the, the memorized rote and just like say it while we're doing something else. And then we did the same scene playing a game of beer pong, and it was so cool just because it came across so natural. And maybe that would be some good advice for people trying to do something like that. Like you're in a scene here where you're playing the part of a professor pacing back and forth in front of your students. So why not take your Kindle and read along and just like pace while you're reading that Kindle, doing the scene of that guy. And I bet you that would help you be more, feel more natural in doing that guy's voice,
Right.
and getting into the character, understanding that, yeah, he's talking, he's turning to glare at this person, and then he's making a pointed stare at this person. That might be helpful to just like do something else, wash dishes as you're like reading your Kindle and read it out loud,
Totally.
whatever it happens to be, might
Well,
help.
like that's
So,
basic acting. That's like given
mhm.
circumstances, right? Like list him at the top of the scene where at the beginning of the chapter she comes in running. Not that you're going to huff and puff, but like you know that in your mind, like she's also
Right.
doing now,
Yeah.
or something, right? Like
Yeah.
yeah,
I think that'd be helpful. Yeah. I think that's
that's
a,
a good
like
idea.
a great tip. So, okay, let's take a look at Blanca Frappier, and Blanca belongs to Samantha. You ready?
Yeah. Yeah, so when we had our session, I remember Blanca was really nervous, and so there was a lot of like stop starting and breathing issues. And now that I can hear when I listen to this whole section, when she's not in that kind of situation, there's still a pushing. Like I can feel like just yeah, it just feels like she's kind of like pushing things throughout that I feel like she can take her foot off the gas pedal like a little bit because there's some really great instincts. I really think like from a technical perspective, I think where her voice wants to land for that male character is in a very like soothing, beautiful, great place. But it that and then when she breaks back into narration or the female characters, it then is like busted up with this kind of like urgency that doesn't need to be like as intense. And I think a lot of what we talked about all throughout this entire session is like finding that tightrope walk is really so much of our job as narrators
Right.
with the text.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's great. Great feedback.
No.
Let's
Teddy's got Andy's
My
back.
Mentoses,
yeah. Here we go.
because I think her narration stands out. I think a little bit. She to me when I'm listening to her, I feel like I'm listening to just a narrator who's been doing it for a long time. Like I feel like I'm picking up on experience with her, and like I think when you look at her, she's working right now, so she has I think the benefit of she's in the weeds already a little bit, get working through some of these things on her own.
Yeah.
But also what you see with that is you see this feels like a completed product a little bit. There's moments when she's maybe pushing a little bit in her narration, and there's maybe a couple moments where she could find a better pathway in, but for the most part I felt she feels like a person who's done her work to where she's accomplished a couple things now in her art in the way in which she's narrating. So I'm very impressed with her in particular, and I think her voices are good. She's not reaching, but they still feel unique. Her narration has life to it, but it's not forced. She understands the tight walk. I think what Samantha was saying. She understands the tight walk, and she's walking it. And there's still some things that I think she might lose her balance a little bit as she's going through. But like what we've been saying, as far as some of this stuff only comes with time. Some of this stuff only comes with doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it.
Yeah.
That then you can start to dial it in. That I don't know. I felt pretty good about her the first time I heard her. We gave her some notes. She does a cheat also. She does an accent with one of those voices, so it is hard to say, oh, her two men are very different, because they are, because one has an accent and the other one doesn't. So
Right.
I don't know how much of that is a cheat, but also the accent she gives the character is sort of an accent that also comes along with some characterization as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's something I want to put just a finer point on what you're saying, and it builds on something that Vanessa brought up before, which was like, you could trust me as the narrator, like there's not going to be a pop quiz. I think there is a inexplicable confidence that a narrator brings to a microphone and to storytelling, and it is connected to how your voice sounds. And I don't know, like, I can't put my finger on it. I don't have a good vocabulary for it. But when I hear it, I know it, and I know that I trust whatever is going to happen next. I trust whatever you said before. You're going to make sense for me in the future, and I am just with you. And it's easy for me to listen because I'm not working because I trust you. And I think Andy, to your point of feeling very like experienced, I think it's that quality that she brings to it that comes out. That's nice.
Yeah, maybe that's a big part of the narration game, is just working until you get that muscle memory and you come into every project with the confidence that you can, that you can deliver.
Well, that's the thing. Also, just in getting work in this industry, whether it's from an author who asks you to read their book, or just a production company that wants to, or a publisher, there's they're not gonna they're not gonna generally jump at somebody they've never heard before because they can't trust that person,
Right.
and they don't know if they're gonna be able to like complete a book. So before they send them, here's a contract for a 20-hour book, like you'll be able to take care of it, right? There's a big trust that happens there, and I think that same thing, like to Samantha's point, happens on the art level too, as far as the listener's experience. If I'm going to sit down and listen to this book for a long time, I want to feel like you are able to take me on this journey.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that might explain a lot about like momentum. Why does it take so long to catch your momentum? Well, probably that. It's it's like you gotta you have to have the experience before you can deliver that confidence, and you have to
even while somebody's typing on their keyboard.
Oh, brother, I'm so sorry. I felt like it. I actually did Andy dirty twice. I almost forgot to put her in, and then while she was in, I was actually typing to Brandon,
Troy doesn't
our producer.
want Andy to win. Let it be known.
No, it's not true. But I typed a note to Brandon saying, "Don't let me forget if I left anybody else off. Hell is the last one in the thing, right? If not, let me know so I don't sound like an idiot again." While I was sounding like an idiot typing. So, all right. So, let's go to Hell. And okay, what are your thoughts on Hell?
Cool. This is like the gender bender, right? So like I'm gonna start with the male voice. I really liked how relaxed she was with her male voice, and I liked how specific it was. So like I heard like a guy who sleeps with a sleep apnea machine. Like I know that dude,
Yeah.
He's got like there's like something in the back of the throat and the nose. Like that was really specific. I could like picture him even without a character description. I thought that was awesome. I thought maybe her narration was a little too hot for me. I needed it like that was like the energy was like a chase scene instead of tension in a classroom. Yeah, which is like cool because like I get that she gets it, how like emotionally volatile it is in that scene, and how like whatever turned up you are as a teen when like something embarrassing happens. But I felt like it was too much. It took too much away from the actual dialogue, which played under the narration. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's great.
I don't want to like discredit her because like I really liked her reads, and even last week she did such a great job. She gave a very like down to earth, like lovely read. Yeah. So I don't want to like.
No,
I can be in a chase scene too.
To highlight the fact that there, because a lot of people tonight we're doing that. We're coming in
hot.
Yeah. So it's like, and it's one of those things where the way you said it, it's not like, it sounds like it's a chase scene. That's the way you said it in that moment, and that's that got the point across. But when you're especially in a situation like this, which is a competition, and like everybody's going to be judging you on your acting and on your performance ability, and other people are saying don't do too little, then all of a sudden it's like a chase scene, like you have to like
and it's so much easier to be on this side of the Zoom than on that one, obviously.
Next time they can pull references from any of our books and rip us to shreds next time. Just equally, please do.
I don't want this. This is some bad karma here.
No. But it goes back to like the whole reason that that we decided to do the next Dark Star competition is because, like, looking back at the beginning of my career, I would have killed for some for some honest input and feedback on how I was doing. You
Yeah.
know, and I mean, it's still valuable to me, like to hear somebody,
I would say
give
that
me.
like every single voice that we've heard has like already is at a certain level and is bringing a degree of raw natural talent and instinct and unique vocal quality. Like I listen to auditions a lot as part of my work, and there are just voices here that stuck out because I just haven't heard a voice like that before. And
Yeah.
it's very
Right.
easy to hear a lot of same voices in this work. And so there's a lot of really exciting stuff here that I'm excited to watch each of these actors refine their skills.
Yeah.
And
I
it's
gotta
good
tell
to
you.
get that feedback. When I was first starting out, there wasn't the home studio revolution hadn't quite happened yet, and so it was also most narrators when they were narrating with like an engineer, director there, another person to be bounced, to like come back in and say, well, maybe do that a little bit more or do that a little bit less.
Yeah.
And now
true.
it's just you, man. It's
You're on
just
your
you
own,
in the
yeah.
booth.
Yeah. That's why I was so happy to have you guys, because I mean, really, looking at the four of you, it's amazing. We've got, Samantha is an accomplished, voice actress in her own right, but also a casting director and a director. Vanessa, actress and a voice actress, and animation and such a broad breadth of experience in all kinds of audiobooks. J.A. Huss, a writer who's able to write in so many voices and styles, and I think that it's the books that you write are very they're so very descriptive, and they do require a lot of different characters and in different intensities of the characters, and of course Teddy with
Teddy, yes.
your background working at Day and Audio and as a director and with so many audiobooks that you've done as well. I love that these competitors have such a wealth of knowledge in your input. So
Well, thank you, Troy.
Yeah.
beautiful thing.
Thanks for having us.
So
Yeah, this is
absolutely. So the competition is, we're going to have a day. We're gonna post this video, this feedback session for people to watch, and then the voting begins in earnest on Tuesday morning, starting at midnight, and then we have nearly a full week of voting, and we'll find out who makes it to the top 12 of the next Dark Star. 3 days of voting.
2 days.
2 days of voting. We have a certain period of time of voting, and you better vote,
Nailed it.
vote,
Nailed it.
vote early and often. That's all I can say. But I think that the fact that we got your feedback after giving your mentorship to these competitors means the world, and I think it's going to be this is going to be like so instructive to anybody interested in looking behind the scenes at the narration game, but especially all the aspiring narrators out there. So
Listen,
thank you.
Troy, I'm just glad for all the money that you're paying me, and I'm assuming everybody else too that's part of this.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And now,
Very
and now we went
fair.
over time. I've got to figure out how to pay you, over union scale. So, no, thank you very much for your time, all of you, and I really appreciate it. And I can't wait to see the results of this next challenge.
yeah, this is gonna be exciting. Thanks for
Yeah, it's
having
pretty
us.
exciting. Yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you.
All right, take care, everybody. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.